Story 1. Concussion. I got my first concussion at age 60. My memory was really good before, nearly photographic. Now, I forget the names of people, objects, and almost anything. It is like part of my brain is locked up, and I do not have a key for it. Story 2. Working for a difficult supervisor affects your mental well-being. Story 3. Intensive care unit stays. I have been intubated twice this year. Intensive care unit delirium is very real, awful, and frightening. You lose all sense of reality, making it nearly impossible to process anything. I hallucinated my deceased boyfriend decomposing in front of me and generally had no idea what was real. Story 4. Trauma seems dramatic, but getting laid off really affected me. Every day, I wake up with a pit in my stomach. I still think about it daily at my current job, and it has been years. Reading all the comments is actually kind of cathartic. I appreciate all of you. Story 5. The lasting effects of a mental illness persist even after you have gotten through the worst of it. There will still be lingering symptoms, combined with the grief of having lost so much of your life and your personality to it. Edit. It is disheartening to see that this is my most upvoted comment to date. I did not expect this to resonate with so many people. I want to remind everyone who is struggling that you are not alone and that there are people able and willing to help. Thank you for the upvotes and support. Stay strong. Story 6. Being screamed at. I grew up in a household with constant arguments. Even witnessing someone being yelled at makes my whole body tense. Story 7. Non-serious car accidents. When I was younger, I was with my grandfather, and we were hit from the right at an intersection. No one was hurt in the accident at all. I went bowling about 20 minutes later. Yet, it has been years, and I still get that anxiety and panicked feeling when a car is pulling up to an intersection from the right. Story 8. Being a whistleblower. Reaching the point where you know you have to speak up is a breaking moment in itself, when you realize that staying silent is no longer an option, despite knowing the risks. Following through and blowing the whistle is isolating and terrifying. You are putting your trust in systems and people who may not be there to protect you. The fear of retaliation, the loss of relationships, and the feeling of being labeled as the enemy all take their toll. Even after it is over, the impact lingers long after everyone else has moved on. The world expects you to return to normal, but the experience leaves a deep mark, changes you, trust becomes harder, and the weight of what you did and why never fully leaves you. I do not regret it, but I am not who I used to be anymore. Edit Saturday morning, October 26th. I just woke up and see this clearly struck a nerve with many, so I am going to add details to help guide others as far as possible without compromising myself. In my country, whistleblowers are protected by law, so I knew doing it meant they could not come after me financially or fire me. That said, I also know how little the law protects you if the company decides to make your life hell at work for doing it. Hence, I did it anonymously and stayed anonymous. A friend who works in human resources told me, "No one wants to hire a whistleblower. They are considered troublemakers, so tell no one about this, ever." Since I was whistleblowing on the chief executive officer, I knew I could not use the proper channels as per the company's whistleblower directive, so I reported the person directly to the board with human resources in copy. This meant everyone at the top, the owner, the board, and the chief executive officer was compromised, and they had to bring in external lawyers to investigate. This is not necessarily the case in other countries, so check this before you do it. I was high enough in the system that I not only heard how the chief executive officer reacted, they were furious that someone did this and were on the hunt for the whistleblower, claiming the board supported them. They even made a top 5 list, openly talking to the management level about who was on it. I was also seated on the same office floor, so hearing doors slam, whispered conversations, hurried footsteps, and raised voices behind locked doors caused me a lot of tension. Trust no one. I sat around listening to colleagues speculating about who the whistleblower was, like it was some reality show, gleefully marinating in gossip instead of doing something themselves. The chief executive officer had been causing havoc in the company many years before I joined, so for years people had done nothing. When they finally had the opportunity, no one stepped up. In fact, I sat around listening to colleagues who were leaders, while their staff listened to how appalled they were and how much they hated what had been done. As a last note, I did end up leaving the company in the end, as I lost all respect for the company and my colleagues. While it was probably the worst time of my entire life, I want to underline that I do not regret it. Standing up for myself and doing what was right made me able to claim back the power and control I felt had been taken from me. That said, I probably will not stomach doing something like this again, and I have lost a little fight and faith in humanity because of it. Thank you for all your supportive comments, and if you need to talk, feel free to contact me privately. It massively helps to talk to someone who has been through it if you are thinking about doing it or are already in the middle of it. Story 9. Maybe not as serious, but job searching and continuous rejections are daunting. It is disheartening to watch hard-earned savings and emergency funds drain while feeling powerless because you cannot progress to the next step in the interview process. Story 10. Early childhood trauma includes not holding your child, neglecting basic needs, or living in a toxic environment. Even in the earliest years, it has a lifelong impact on how our attachment style develops and how well we manage emotional regulation. This can cause significant issues later in life. Many people believe children will not understand due to their age and think it will not bother the child or that they will not remember or use other excuses. However, children do not need to understand for the experience to be traumatic. Early childhood development is vital for stability and a proper foundation to become a functioning adult later in life. Story 11. Parents did not teach me basic life skills. When I turned 18, my parents never taught me how to do anything, so I had to learn everything from Google and sometimes from my adult coworkers. Thankfully, I had someone there who taught me those things. Hearing about other families giving life advice and skills just hurts. Story 12. Being homeless does not matter how bad you think it was. It is a lot worse. Edit. I wrote this because I strongly believed no one would read it. Story 13. Watching someone you love die is difficult. I did not expect it to be good or easy, but I will never be the same as the day my mother died. Story 14. Other people's apathy. I am a teacher, and I used to love my job. After COVID, the students do not participate in anything. I used to have discussions in my class. Students would ask questions and we would go off on tangents. It was great. Now, I mostly listen to the sound of my own voice. It has affected me a lot, and I have nightmares about the complete lack of motivation in the people around me. Story 15. When you realize your partner has not loved, cared for, or liked you not just currently, but for a very long time, after the realization hits and memories come up, you see them in a new framework and recognize all the signs. You even remember noticing things as they happened. Sometimes I would talk about it with that person. Other times I would just tell myself I must be overanalyzing. Story 16. Having depression. I am genuinely traumatized from the times I have been so close to leaving the earth on my own terms. The feeling is indescribable. I do not see enough people talking about how, after crawling out of such a deep hole, it is genuinely so scary to think about it happening again. Story 17. Having someone manipulate you for years in a relationship and realizing when it is ending that you are a shell of who you once were. Story 18. Living with an invisible chronic condition, in my case Crohn's disease, and in my wife's case fibromyalgia. We both look fine on the outside but frequently deal with different types of unseen pain and discomfort that others find hard to relate to. Even though these are different conditions, it is helpful that we each have a basic understanding of what the other is experiencing. Story 19. Watching a loved one die from cancer and then hearing people who survived talk about being stronger than cancer and deciding that cancer could not beat them makes me irrationally angry. Are you saying my mom died because she was weak or did not want to live? I am glad you survived, and I am sure having a positive attitude helps, but it is not because you were stronger or better than people who died. Story 20. Being left out. Even though I am accepted and have a strong voice in my fraternal order, I still experience intense feelings of loneliness from growing up that I find difficult to express. Story 21. Being bullied. We know it can be harmful to children, but being bullied as an adult can have the same effects. Feelings of isolation and loneliness, a fear of worthlessness, depression and sadness, fear of going where the bully is, fear of doing or saying something that will cause them to react toward you, afraid of reacting to what they say or do so you do not appear weak or vulnerable. Being bullied absolutely sucks. Story 22. Layoffs affect those who are not fortunate enough to be born into a wealthy and supportive family, especially those who need jobs. The people who carry out layoffs often say, "It's not your fault, you did nothing wrong. It's not personal, just business," and then return to their secure paychecks. To those who perform layoffs and claim, "It's just business, nothing personal," yet sleep soundly at night, consider the harm you cause. Story 23. Your spouse having an affair. Having done some research, it seems there is a form of post-traumatic stress disorder that occurs with this type of betrayal. It does not just hurt, it takes a huge mental toll. Story 24. Losing your hair, woman or man. I lost 70% of my hair at age 14. I am 37 now, and my hair is regrowing thanks to being on Janus kinase inhibitors for autoimmune conditions. Throughout the years, I have heard it all. Well, at least you still have hair. Or your hair is curly, so it does not look that thin. That may sound comforting, but nearly all statements were said in invalidating ways. They downplayed my extreme hair loss by saying, "It is just hair," or told me to get over it. It really affected my self-esteem for a long time, and there was a huge sense of grief. Woman or man, our hair affects how we feel about our appearance. I am so thankful medication is restoring my hair. 7 weeks on Rinvoq, and my hairline has completely filled back in. Story 25. Childbirth. What makes it worse is that you are strongly discouraged from talking about it. Story 26. Being stalked and harassed continually by someone happened to me last year. I still have post-traumatic stress disorder dreams about it, and some days it is hard for me to leave the house because I know he knows where I live. Story 27. Childhood parental neglect. The Deepest Well, Healing the Long-Term Effects of Childhood Adversity, 2018 by Nadine Burke-Harris. Story 28. One thing that can be more traumatizing than people realize is emotional neglect, especially in childhood. It might not leave visible scars, but the long-term effects on self-esteem, relationships, and mental health can be profound. Many people underestimate how damaging it can be to feel unseen or unvalued. Story 29. Undiagnosed neurodivergence. Simple tasks like making a sandwich or doing laundry can feel as difficult as holding your hand in a bucket of ice. If you don't push through and do it without showing that it is a struggle, you may be seen as lazy, selfish, or manipulative. Suddenly, at age 30, you experience panic attacks every time you try to do laundry. You may also discover on your own that you have developed complex post-traumatic stress disorder from just existing. Story 30. Experiencing long-term poverty completely rewires your brain. Story 31. Being the scapegoat. I hold myself in high regard as a very honest person. I am still blamed for many things that did and did not happen. Story 32. When your best friend tells you they do not want to be your friend anymore. Story 33. Embarrassing or humiliating children, especially in public. I have seen many parents, teachers, and managers do this. Story 34. Tell someone you were bullied as a kid, and they will shrug it off and say it made you stronger. That is not true. It causes long-term trauma. Story 35. Among the top causes of post-traumatic stress disorder in America are 1. Military service. 2. Sexual assault. 3. Car accidents. If you ask an American to imagine someone with post-traumatic stress disorder, it is very likely they will imagine a veteran rather than one of the other two. Story 36. Not being wanted or loved anymore by someone you love more than anything in the world. Story 37. Neglect. I am 30 and still discovering how the emotional void my mother left has impacted my life. I have already come a long way from the cynical outlook I once had, but I still feel there is a long journey ahead. Story 38. Diagnosed nightmare disorder. I have been having nightmares every day for almost 6 years. Story 39. Watching your loved one die from cancer is heartbreaking, but rarely do people talk about how traumatizing it is. I watched my father slowly die from cancer, and it took years to get some of those images out of my head. Story 40. Chronic illnesses. People with chronic illnesses often appear anxious, and those around them may say they are hypochondriacs, but healthy individuals do not understand it. An upset stomach can easily turn into a severe flare-up that results in months of appointments and medications. I personally have multiple sclerosis and psoriatic arthritis. Every multiple sclerosis flare-up has been like going to sleep fine and waking up with no sensation on one side of my body. Once, I leaned over and thought I pulled a muscle, and within 3 hours, the pain spread to my entire rib cage and nearly immobilized me for weeks. It is very frightening, and we maintain a strong demeanor most of the time. However, you cannot understand how traumatic it is until you experience it yourself. Story 41. Teasing. When I was younger, people would tease me about the opposite sex. Just being close to a girl would get you teased by old relatives and classmates. It was so uncomfortable that even now I cannot get close to a girl or form a romantic relationship because I feel awkward. I found it more calming and peaceful to be friends with guys, which is why I think I switched teams. Story 42. Tickling, especially when it is done aggressively and without consent. Story 43. Being forgotten or overlooked started as a kid and continues as an adult. Forgotten at birthday parties, sleepovers, and on the playground then, and now I frequently get my name skipped when my boss lists who will be at work on any given day when scheduled. I am still scheduled, just overlooked. I joke about them forgetting me all the time, but it does not really help me or them. Story 44. Being ignored quite suddenly by someone you talked with every day, who told you daily that they loved you, and made you love them back. When you have spent a significant amount of time with this person, months, not weeks, or even a year, and suddenly they are gone. No word, nothing. I thought I was completely worthless. Now I think about attempting suicide. It will take a long time to heal. Story 45. Growing up poor, I rethink every purchase and barely get to enjoy spending, fearing not having food on the table. Story 46. Gaslighting, the real kind. You start to question your sanity. Then you think you are really going insane. Then you begin experiencing physical symptoms that cannot be explained. You go to doctors, therapists, and psychiatrists because you need help before you lose control altogether. Then you cut the gaslighter out of your life and everything makes sense. But you are left with anger, a lot to process, and zero trust in your own judgment of others. Story 47. Becoming severely disabled. You lose your job, house, spouse, friends, and hobbies. If it was due to a workplace accident, you may experience paranoia, feeling as if they have spies visiting your spouse at work and trying to prove you are faking. You then face the same accusations when trying to get on disability. Story 48. Mexican cartels are often portrayed in movies as large Mexican men on bikes with bandanas, smuggling drugs. For example, the movie We Are the Millers. In real life, however, they are not to be trifled with. They will kill people in the most gruesome ways, and no one will ever know unless they want people to know. Even the police do not want to get involved with them. Story 49. Ghosting leaves you wondering, what did I do wrong? You overanalyze the situation and will never know if it was something minor or major. I keep questioning myself years later. It is such a disrespectful move. Story 50. Getting dumped unexpectedly makes you question your own thoughts and every relationship for a long time. Even years later, there is always a thought in the back of my mind about whether my husband is being honest when he says he loves me. I have worked on this in therapy, but it is impossible to fully trust when the person you love most in the world can just leave you without warning by choice. Story 51. Armed robbery. I still get nervous when a car is following me. Story 52. Bullying as a child can severely damage your self-esteem, sense of self, trust in others, and perception of social interactions and relationships. Story 53. Death. My husband of 40 years suddenly died from COVID-19. He was not old or sick. I knew he should go to the emergency room, but he would not. The last thing I said to him was, "I am going to be mad if something happens to you." Even worse, I had to go through the trauma of finding him. I cried for 2 years. People would tell me I should not still be grieving. Everyone grieves differently. Story 54. Parents using fear tactics on their children. This may not seem bad, but hear me out. My father spanked me and my siblings growing up, along with smacking and similar actions, but that is different. He used a belt to spank us, but also used it as a fear tactic. He would snap the belt loudly to get us to listen, which helped develop my sensitivity to loud noises. One time, a friend took off her belt and started snapping it because she was impressed by the loud sound. Since we were in a room with echo, the sound was magnified. When she did this, I immediately covered my ears and closed my eyes, folding into myself like a pill bug. I yelled at her to please stop. I did not realize I was yelling, and she stopped but asked if I was okay. I did not know I had this trauma response and was surprised at my own reaction. Loud noises usually make me scared and anxious, but the sound of a belt snapping specifically triggered this reaction. I may just be sensitive. Story 55. I am being completely serious when I say my father yelled and insulted me while explaining my mathematics homework when I was a child. Not only did it make me hate mathematics, but it also gave me low self-esteem, which I am still struggling with today. Story 56. Having your privacy violated and then being mocked for the things that were found is distressing. Over 20 years later, I still do not allow anyone other than myself to use my devices. Everything is locked or password protected, and every online account I use that even remotely has social features has every possible privacy option set to the maximum. Story 57. Stalking, even in minor cases. My grandmother stalked me at my workplace, and I only saw her once. I had already given my 2 weeks' notice due to unrelated reasons, but it caused me to have an anxiety attack in front of my coworkers. I did not realize how much it affected me until I saw a woman who looked almost exactly like her during a movie, and I was genuinely shaking with fear. Story 58. Caretaking of a permanently disabled loved one, whether an adult or a child, is unending and isolating. You don't know how to be a regular person when they are not present. Story 59. Coming to terms with getting old is pretty traumatizing. It is like something you keep sweeping under the rug. Then you gain empathy for parents and other people as you realize what they were going through. It is very strange. Story 60. Emergency dispatch. I know people understand it can be traumatic, but I don't think they realize just how much. My coworker and friend had someone who took their own life while on the phone with him, and he had been trying to talk them out of it. All I heard was him yelling, "No, no, no," increasingly louder. Then he stood up and removed his headset. One supervisor took over his station, and another one pulled him away to talk to him. He didn't come back for 3 weeks. That was the second time it had happened to him. You really don't recover from experiences like that. Story 61. Infertility and miscarriages are difficult experiences. First, you struggle with wondering why you cannot get pregnant while having to be happy for others who do. Then, when you finally become pregnant and start dreaming about your baby, you may find out you have lost them. This happens often, yet it remains stigmatized. Unless you go through infertility or miscarriage, you may not realize how traumatizing it can be. Story 62. Being arrested is often portrayed as a matter-of-fact event on television. Story 63. Car crashes, whether minor or major, and knowing people who have passed away in them have deeply affected me. I was involved in a minor accident in my youth, and unfortunately, 3 friends passed away in 2 different crashes when I was a junior in high school. My uncle also died due to drunk driving when I was much younger. To this day, I have extreme anxiety around driving. I get so anxious that I throw up if I know we will be driving through certain chaotic and unsafe areas, especially when I am a passenger. I am very selective about where I drive because my anxiety is severe. I have never been in a serious accident myself, but I am terrified of it, and it has had a lifelong impact on my relationship with driving and travel. My partner does most of the driving. I avoid driving in large, unfamiliar cities such as New York City and Miami. I do not take jobs that require significant commuting or travel. I currently work for a traffic engineering firm, which has been very beneficial for managing my driving anxiety. However, I am still scared. I wish I never had to drive and could just teleport everywhere. Story 64. I'm surprised no one has mentioned sexual harassment. It doesn't have to be full assault to affect you. Story 65. Losing a pet is devastating. People who are not pet owners often do not realize how deeply it affects those who love their animals. Story 66. Miscarriage. I almost bled to death. Definitely not just a heavy period. Story 67. Being criticized and yelled at constantly as a child causes emotional trauma. Emotional trauma is real and literally changes the structure and chemical makeup of your brain. You develop a low sense of self and struggle throughout life. Ask me how I know. Story 68. Having attention deficit hyperactivity disorder causes a lifetime of pain and misunderstanding, and many people think you are lying when you have the bravery to be honest about having it. It is like living in an invisible cage. People with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder are far more susceptible to depression, anxiety, and addiction. They make up 25% of worldwide prison populations. Our medications are not publicly funded and cost hundreds of dollars per 3 months. Sometimes those medications are not available and the pharmacy calls you back multiple times, telling you it will be there when it is not. As a result, you go to the pharmacy multiple times for no reason. Then, because you have no medication, you are stuck with brain fog, which many people do not understand. They are confused when you are lethargic, cannot think straight, or have mood swings. If you do not take medication, you deal with lethargy and trouble thinking clearly on a daily basis. In addition, medication stigma definitely exists. I have not mentioned, and will not go into, how children and adults treat children who have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, but suffice it to say it is terrible. People who have talked about attention deficit hyperactivity disorder publicly have painted a strange picture of what it actually is. Many people think it is a joke or not actually a disorder, especially with the superpower propaganda being spread around as if it makes any sense. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is not a superpower. Superpowers are fantastical. It is a chronic disability that society ignores, and people live in pain and denial every day because of it. Rant complete. Story 69. A parent with bipolar disorder or mental illness has deep emotional scars. Story 70. Childbirth. We have turned childbirth into an almost non-event in society. We assume everything will go well, and it usually does. However, even the most uncomplicated births can be fairly traumatic. Story 71. 1. Witnessing your mother collapse and performing cardiopulmonary resuscitation on her until emergency medical services arrive. 2. Hearing that she had a widowmaker heart attack. 3. Deciding to take her off life support because she did not have a living will, but every test showed no brain activity. It has been 12 years. I am still traumatized by it. Story 72. Pregnancy. Even when it goes well, that is, no miscarriages or stillbirths, it can still be quite traumatic. Story 73. A cesarean section is often portrayed as the easy way to give birth. Have you ever been awake for major abdominal surgery? The feeling is indescribable and horrific. Story 74. Life. Went through most of the comments and everyone is so valid. I guess life itself can be very traumatic indeed. Story 75. Poverty and homelessness. My child and I were homeless for a year. The lack of resources and available housing for homeless families was overwhelming. The entire experience was very traumatizing. From losing every material possession to losing emotional security and stability. Staying with a friend who did not want us there. Having nothing of our own. Experiencing a homeless shelter. And feeling overlooked or ignored by society. It was all traumatic and damaging. Even after overcoming it and living in a stable home of our own, though still renting, for the past few months, I am still working to break free of that mindset. At first, I did not want to buy anything we could not carry with us in a few bags if we lost our home and had to leave suddenly. Now, I am just becoming comfortable with accumulating belongings again. Feels strange. Many people assume that there are more social services and resources available for poor families than actually exist, especially for single mothers, particularly in poor, rural areas of conservative states. Story 76. Job loss. I lost my amazing job of 9 years in a 10-minute meeting because I was no longer needed and my department was deemed redundant. As much as you try to listen to the "it's nothing personal" crowd, it is personal to you. It makes you feel replaceable and devalues the 9 years of work you did because, at the end of the day, you feel like it wasn't good enough to keep you. All the corporate talk about how great you're doing and getting high ratings means nothing because, at the end of the day, all it takes is 10 minutes. I've learned that, As cynical as it sounds, going above and beyond means nothing if a chief executive officer wants to shake things up. I still work hard, but I don't go above and beyond anymore to impress a chief executive officer. I've lost that part of me. Maybe that's a good thing, maybe not, but I work for me and watch out for me first now. I mourn the loss of the trust one had and feel foolish for thinking a corporation would take care of me. I learned my lesson, but not without scars. After 3 months of not working, I start a contract soon, and I'm working hard to move past this experience so I can show up as my best self. But I fear my best self is lost. This company has been truly kind to me and knows my situation. So I'm going to show up for them as hard as I can and, with time, hope this helps the healing process. Story 77. Relationships in general, family, friends, romantic, work, and others, can be stressful. The situation has been worsening to the point where even extroverts are avoiding public spaces. It seems that the only people still seeking out others are either desperately lonely or toxic. Individuals looking for their next victim. Everyone is hiding from them, and there are no consequences for their bad behavior as long as they do it legally or avoid getting caught. This is damaging our society, which is already near its breaking point due to other ongoing challenges. Story 78. Being a little child and having an adult man scream at you in absolute rage. Story 79. Seeing a living creature die. In August 2010, I saw a dog get run over by a truck. The dog did not die instantly, crawled around on the asphalt, yelping for 10 seconds before dying. I will never forget that as long as I live. Story 80. Rape is seriously dismissed repeatedly. That memory does not go away. Edit. I am not writing this because I am personally processing trauma. I am writing because it stays with you like psychological herpes. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.